Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP with myself, Rob Portman, and Paul Scott is joining me once again after a brief little miss last week. If you didn't catch the show that we had with the Esmond brothers, it is up on our YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. It was a great, insightful conversation with Bjorn Esmond, who is Brad's pretty much right-hand man, and Ryan Esmond, who works for Alpine-Star in Europe and handles all the Alpine-Star rider helmets within the paddock. So Jorge Martin, Pedro Acosta, Furusato now in Moto3, and of course Jack Miller. So it was a great, really great chat. Paul, did you tune in for that?
Yeah, Rob, absolutely fantastic. I really thought it was, to me, it was fantastic. I preferred the info from Ryan a little bit more because it's stuff we never hear about. And James Dent has a Alpine Star helmet, and to hear the thing that blew me away, if you buy that helmet off the shelf, the top of the range, you get exactly the same helmet. They just have their own cheek pads. I thought every helmet for those guys was custom made. Just shows the quality of what you can buy off the shelf. And I don't know, Rob, what that helmet costs. Probably, I'm guessing in the region of South African money, 15 to 20 grand.
Well, it's 1,100 pounds here.
Yeah, so give or take, and I'm not too sure. But I mean, you buying exactly what Martin, Miller, whoever it is, Pedro Acosta, I mean, that really blew me away. But I thought it was a fantastic chat. Excellent. And I understand they had time constraints, so there were one or two things that they could have been grilled upon, but maybe also they're not so much Ryan, Bjorn, but absolutely fantastic. And just to highlight how Bjorn, many times he highlighted how hard the team is working. Yes. They're giving it 110%. There's no one there is not pulling 100% for that team, which was really good to hear, because I think, and obviously he's not going to come on the show and say, listen, we've got an oak in the back of the telemetry oak who does bugger all. He's never going to say that, but he certainly implied that everyone is 100% behind the project for the time being.
Yeah, and honestly, even before we went on air, I kind of, Bjorn, we're off air now, how's it impacted with us? And he just said, honestly, Rob, this team is working harder than ever. Brad's working harder than ever. I'm working harder than ever. They spend all that money and they want to go there to get results. So, I mean, we'll talk about it. But yeah, it was positive. I think Jerez was positive. We'll touch upon that with KTM as well. So yeah, a bit more positivity to talk about surrounding the whole KTM saga and story, we can basically say. But a big hello to Coffee Lowe, Van A. Rasmus, Brian Ritchie, Wayne Taylor, Paolo Cecchetti, David Callahan, Dirk Crosby, Deep Sea Diver Schmidt, CP Buertz, David Hawes, David McBain, Kev Foree, Jacques Smuts. Hello, all you beautiful people. And as he says as well, HJC are the same where they are for one helmet. It's exact same helmet that you can buy that Brad Binder wears in MotoGP. So, the quality's there. You just do pay that premium price tag for it. Speed Angle, South Africa, Debbie Aitken-Smith Brand, Monique Manuel, Ashley Belden, Mart van Jaarsveld, Andre Essex, Ollie Moto's in the house, Charmaine Fulyun, and Michael Maggot, Jonathan Murphy also joining us. So, Paul, we can climb straight into it. We've got lots to talk about, so I don't want to waste any time whatsoever. We'll touch upon quickly our other South Africans, starting off with Rushay Mudley in the Moto3 category. Started off so well, was leading. I was working at the EICMA Ride Fest at Misano at the Marcus Simoncelli circuit. So I was all a bit fanboy with everything going on there, South African working at these great events. I still get that fanboy kind of moment doing that. But then I quickly jumped onto social media when I could. My brother was handling the Motor Rider World page and keeping everyone up to date. And I saw Clint Potgieter's post of this Rushay Mudley on top. So, but I didn't read how early in the session or late. I just saw Rushay Mudley on top, and I just wanted to shout to every Italian that was listening, hey, South Africa's on top. But it was just a great sight. And then obviously he scrolled a bit further down and he had, finished top 5 or whatever in that F1. And I was like, this is exactly kind of what we were talking about. As soon as he gets to that comfort ground of Europe, going to start showing, did everything he had to do in the away races, new tracks, learning the Moto3 vibe, learning the Moto3 bike, learning the team, had to deal with all of that while traveling long distances away from home, away from everything. Very tough situation for him at such a young age. but he did everything right there. Got into Europe and, chest out, and the confidence was going to be there. And then unfortunately just had the technical problem that really just put a dent in his weekend, that backfired with qualifying, which put him much further back on the grid than he would have wanted to have been. And then we know in any category at that level, starting from the back brings all its kind of challenges, and that coming through the field as he did, sounds like he just hooked a false neutral, the bike hooked into gear again, ran straight, a racing incident, and down he went. And unfortunately now fractured his arm, which he's had surgery on. It's been plated. Spoke to Arushan today, sent me a photo of him in hospital. Everything went well there. But yeah, a weekend that promised so much hope.
No, absolutely, Robin. I was watching as well. And to see him, and I knew, we discussed it, exactly what we said. He's done so well on tracks he's never seen. Now he goes to a track where I'm presuming he's raced there or ridden there before.
Yes.
So straight away, lap one, he knows which corner goes left, which corner goes right, and he has an idea of the racing line. Straight away, immediately, I don't think he ever went out of the top 5 on Friday morning and Friday afternoon. And then unfortunately, the technical issue, and then the crash, which we know resulted in the fractured arm. Did Arushan give you any idea of the time frame? I'm going to presume he won't be in France this coming weekend. So probably, he's young, so he heals quickly. And if they've plated or pinned it or whatever they do, chances are 2-3 weeks time, he could be on the grid, eh?
Yeah, he didn't give me anything. It was just operation went well. They've plated it. It's his right arm. So a picture of Richer with his right arm fully casted. So, unfortunately, I think it's going to be a while. I'm hoping they make it to Silverstone because it would be nice to see them. But obviously, it's it's his health in that first. But let's wait and see. But either way, I think signs of what's to come from
definitely.
Once again.
Yeah, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And he just, even though he had the crash, when watching him, because he got quite a lot of TV coverage, he just looked the part. Yeah, not to say he hasn't anywhere else, but now, previously we've kind of seen him in the background, and if you watch, you say, "Oh, red bike must be him." Now they were showing him, and absolutely fantastic. He's very smooth. He looks, he belongs there. There's no doubt, absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, it was great. A lot of positivity from both sets of commentators. I watched the TNT and the normal MotoGP coverage. So doing the right things there. On to Darren Binder in Moto2. Struggled, just didn't get it right. Again, it's that frustration of seeing his former team performing, Gonzalez winning, Aegis on the podium, Arenas qualifying well, finishing okay. Darren not having the weekend that he would have wanted at a track that he's done so well at in previous years. But seeing from what Courtney and others have posted on, I haven't spoken to Darren or anything, but seeing what they are, he's still struggling with that injury that he picked up in
Kota.
Yeah, Kota, just before Qatar. Yeah, so that's definitely plaguing him a little bit, but it's that frustration of just, the weekend seemed to be going by so quick. It already feels like we're halfway through the season, but we're only, 5 or 6 rounds in. So something's got to start clicking for Daz soon. So let's hope he can get that wrist sorted, the injury sorted, and back to his best. So he can. We've spoken about it so many times, but he just needs a bit of consistency, a bit of momentum, 2 or 3 good races, get him on that podium. I think once he gets that first podium in Moto2, hopefully kick on to something. But for now, it's a frustrating exercise.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And, it seems to compound for Darren. I don't want to say year on year, but it seems to be a very similar pattern. Like we said, first 3 rounds, he was good. Okay, got punted off in round 1 of this year. But then 2, 3, very good. Then he has an injury. Now he's back on the back foot. Yeah. And, as much as we know he's giving 100%, I don't care how tough you are, riding with some injuries, specifically hands and collarbones. Those are vital parts to ride a MotoGP bike, Moto2 bike, Moto3 bike, and to ride it fast. Yeah. So suddenly I just feel, man, here he is again on the back foot. Nothing that's going to trouble Darren, but what it does then, it means where he was trying 103%, now he's trying at 103% with an injury.
Yep.
And, the chances of something going wrong are a little bit more than normal. But listen, hopefully correct. And it's adding pressure to the poor guy all the time. We've discussed it. I don't want to say he doesn't get a break, but, motorcycle racing is like that. for us, it's just frustrating because and I'm probably exaggerating here by saying it always seems to happen to him. It's not always, but we take it so to heart. And then the opposite of the icing on the cake, whatever it is, the thorn in the side is his old team. And this weekend, his teammate doing exceptionally well, which I heard a stat, Rob. I don't know if you heard it on the coverage, which coverage it was on for us. Albert Arenas has had 99 Moto2 starts, and he's had 1 podium. So, you hear his name all the time, but he actually, in those terms, he hasn't been that successful. So come on, Dazo, you got to give this like a proper hiding. You only need 2 podiums to be 50% ahead of him. So, anyway, let's hope that by this coming weekend, things are much better for him.
I think as we've spoken about with Moto2, I don't want to go on it too much, but it is such a tough class. I mean, at one stage with his injury, Darren was in 16th, but he had Joe Roberts and a couple of big names just ahead of him, Ramirez, Alonso. These guys were just ahead of him. David Alonso, the next best thing in Moto3, the champ, hasn't quite kicked it off in Moto2 yet. As you said, Arenas, former Moto3 world champion. How many Moto3 world champions have come in and just been lost? Jamal Macias, 9 World Supersport. All those riders have just fizzled out. Dennis Foggia back to Moto3. So it's a very, very tough class. And I was also kind of thinking of it, and I might as well bring it in now, just before we get onto MotoGP. A lot of people were saying, MotoGP is getting boring, and it's the Ducati Cup, and this and this and this, and it got me thinking. Straight away it took my mind to, no one complains about Moto3 being dominated by KTM. It's KTM. KTM dominate Moto3. They have for years and years and years. The odd Honda in there, the 1 or 2 Honda, but it's KTM. It's KTM dominated. But no one brings in the KTM Cup there because the racing's fantastic.
Yeah.
Why is the racing fantastic? Why is the racing also really good more often than not in like the Moto2? It's because it's that one manufacturer. So everyone's essentially on the same bike and the same tires. That's always going to breed better racing because it's up to the rider then. MotoGP has, or Ducati have, kind of separated that now because they're just better. They've just done things better. And Yamaha, I did a Facebook post where someone mentioned the Ducati thing. And I said, you got to drop this. You've got to drop this now. So when Usain Bolt was dominating athletics, you can't tell the guy, listen, man, please just slow down. Or please just put 50 kilos of weight on your shoulder. That's why I disagree with the Bautista and World Superbike. You can't go to the Springboks who have now won so many World Cups and say, no, listen, put smaller guys on your team. Sport goes through these dominating periods. Ducati are doing it at the moment in MotoGP. The show's not about the overtaking in that at the moment. The show for me is about the speed and watching the guys execute the speed and everything that they're doing. There was a little bit of entertaining factor this weekend about certainly the first couple of laps. That's what MotoGP's become. We're going to have those first 2 or 3 laps at best of racing because the guys are jostling for position for their front tire pressure. But then after that, it's management. It's speed management. Pecco's doing this, and we'll talk about it with Pecco just now. And this is where he's really battling, and it's a position he's never been in before, where he's got to manage his tire pressure. He's drop back and then catch up and then drop back. And then the bike handles completely differently when, he's closer to a rider. You can see the bike gets a bit more unstable under braking. Look at Fabio Quartararo's crash with Marquez in the sprint race. Wasn't Mark moving over and pushing? It was purely a bit of disrupted air that Yamaha, you could, on the slow-mo, you can see it perfectly go from stable to not stable. Quartararo hanging on for dear life, too much front brake on. That's where MotoGP's got. That's the part I agree that we need to change, and it is going to be changed from 2027 onwards. There's too many interfering factors with aero and. But just going back to the comment of the Moto3 and Moto2 is more exciting at the moment because it's pretty much essentially everyone on the same bike, same tires and everything, and the rider makes the difference. And this is where the frustration comes in. The frustration, I don't know if that's the right word, but comes in with Darren because we know there's a talent there. He showed it on the MotoGP bike on a couple of occasions. I watched a couple of reruns of Darren just to remind myself because I was lucky enough to be there. But there were races where he was destroying Rebbe Gardner, Raul Fernandez, right on the back of Dovi, dicing with Dovi, not too far from Rossi. And look at that and go, there's a rider there. It's just not coming out in Moto2. It's what's his third season? Third season in Moto2. And that's the frustration. It's like, come on, there's something there. it's got to somehow just be clawed out. So yeah,
Just let it out, yeah, without falling off, yeah. But going back to your point very quickly about Moto3. Funnily enough, my wife was watching Moto3 race on Sunday with me, which she never does. And she, at the end, she even said, "How come there's so many KTMs here?"
Yeah.
And I said to her, "Yeah, that's a very valid point. You know, they're so strong in Moto3. Why is it not like that in MotoGP? I know it's such a different dynamic.
Yeah.
But your point you made about the racing, the first 2 or 3 laps are great. What we're watching now, and Mark highlighted that on Sunday, the precision you need to race a MotoGP bike at that level for 20 whatever many laps. Your margin for error now is 0. You know, Fabio running half a meter wide, crashes. Mark running a quarter of a meter wide at 0.1% too fast, crashes. So as much as the aero's taken away the actual racing, like you say, the speed and the skill level, I think, has been stepped up by a good few percent, that you have to be so spot on, corner after corner after corner, lap after lap after lap. There's just no let up. I mean, Jean Mir is the perfect example. The minute he just has that mid-race lack of concentration, one corner, down he goes. You know, and you can't afford that anymore. The margin for error is 0. It's not even 0.5% anymore. It is 0.
And, you know, we might as well just jump onto it because it kind of blends into this conversation. And that is those days of where most riders, but certainly a Brad Binder's forte was, qualify 11th. It's Brad, Sunday, man, no problem. It's just not going to happen anymore. Because as I said, those first couple of laps, and Mark, you know, Neil Hodgson summed it up perfectly with Mark. It was a bit silly from Mark. He knew he had the overall pace. He knew he had the pace on worn tires. He was the fastest man. So, but this is the mindset of the riders. They panic in those first couple of laps. Mark was like, and there was a great battle in that main race. Pecco overtook, then Mark over, and they were bashing because you're literally jostling for, I need this track position, because if I don't have it, my whole race is then interfered with this tire pressure. So that's why we have that entertainment at the beginning. And in a way, it caused the entertainment for the rest of the race, because Mark crashed and it opened up Alex to go win and everything. But this is the frustration with Brad, because you can't be qualifying 12th, 13th, 10th. If you're not on those front 2 rows to be in the mix in those first couple of laps, you're not going to be anywhere. And if I've looked at all the race starts now for the opening 5 Grand Prix or whatever that we've had, if you look at the start, by the end of lap 1, a Brad or someone that's qualified in 10th, 11th place, crossing the line, they on the first lap, they're 3 seconds off. You've lost 3 seconds in one lap. And that's purely because obviously you're fighting and it's, you know, all that kind of stuff as well. But you've got the guys at the front going, I've got to be at the front. So they're just going. It's just go. Don't worry about full tank. I need fresh. I've set my bike up, tire pressure with no one in front of me. I need to go. And that you could see it clear as day with Mark in that race. He wasn't willing to hang around because my tire pressure is perfect for clear road. And I got a bad start, and that ultimately set up his race to crash. So the qualifying, and I know this is a frustration from Formula One, is that how important qualifying is. It has become so important now, also because of the fact we've spoken so many times, they're all on launch devices. So you're all getting into turn 1 pretty much at the same speed now. So there's all these factors that I agree when people say the racing, I wouldn't use the word boring, but I say it's taking away that entertainment value. Oli Moto said something about 2027. It's interrupting some of the entertainment factor. You know, I can still pull out the watching Mark or Pecco or Fabio go fast, or Brad sliding it, or Maverick now we'll talk about. I can still, that keeps me entertained enough. I want more passing stuff like British Superbikes and whatever. The fact is, get it out of your mind. Until 2027, we're not going to have that. We'll have it on the opening laps like we've seen now, but it's not going to happen anymore because there's too much interference from all these other elements.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point you highlighted about Mark, on Sunday when he dropped to 4th, then he got into 3rd, immediately in my mind I was thinking, I just had that, I don't say premonition, we were going to see Marc Marquez from Honda on the Ducati, which is exactly what we saw. Overriding, immediately panicking. Instead of what we should have seen was the Marc Marquez 2.0 on the Ducati. Like you say, Rob, he's got 26 laps. He knew he had the pace. It's a very difficult track to overtake, But he had done it with Quartararo in the sprint. He kind of had an idea of what he needed to do, but he panicked. And, he made the mistake. There's no doubt. And he says, he doesn't know what happened. First time he's crashed in a left-hander. That's what he said on Sunday. After the test on Monday, he came out and said, listen, I made a mistake. I was overconfident. I was a bit disappointed in him because I thought this Marc Marquez 2.0 was going to be, a third would have been great.
Yeah.
So he managed to get 4 points. But the best rider on that grid at the moment is his brother because, listen, he nearly took out his brother and Bagnaia. That was pretty damn close. Whether he had the wherewithal to see the gap or he was just lucky, I don't know, because they didn't ask him after the race, which if I was the interviewer, that was the only question I would have asked him. Great that he won the race. I would have said, what about nearly taking out two of your biggest rivals? But anyway, he didn't. But he's just settled down to where he's comfortable. The fact that he got gifted a win, I'm saying that with all due respect to him. Yes. He didn't panic. He made one little mistake which had no consequence. But Marc, he used to do it all the time on the Honda. He had panic, and 8 times out of 10 he'd get away with it. He'd have some big saves and what have you. In this Ducati, I think, like we said earlier, your margin for error now is nil. So it made it entertaining, but he's becoming his own worst enemy. That's 2 race crashes in 5 races. If he carries on like this, his brother's going to win the championship. I can't see that happening, but Marc's going to have a serious rethink. Eh?
You know what I think it is, and I agree with you, and I kind of broke it down in my own mind. This is my thought pattern of it. Marc, in that situation, Marc's ego gets in his way. So throughout the whole weekend, there was still that comment made about, I think Pecco made it, someone is looking after you in those left-handers, because looking at the data, and you cannot or should not be able to go through those left-handers that fast. So that's playing on Marc's ego. Then in the race, now Marc said, now he's going in that left hand, he's going to go, watch this. It kind of gets that feeling of, in the corner where Marc's the fastest, he tries to go faster and crashes in a race that he's got tied up no matter where he is on the track. So he's going, he's almost trying to prove a point. That's, I think, sometimes where the ego gets the better of Marc, and we've seen, and it's going to happen. We spoke about it at the beginning of the year. It's going to happen. There's going to be these times where Marc is in full control, but it's almost an ego trip. He just inflates himself and watch, you think I went through that corner fast during qualifying, watch this, He wants to make headlines, is what Marc wants to do, and it backfired on him this time. But we'll touch upon Alex and his brilliance and Pecco and that now. I want to quickly answer this question here from Brian Ritchie, because it's one that a lot of people have brought up. Why not have MotoGP races using one manufacturer per race? Talking about Moto3 and Moto2 being so good, especially Moto3, because everyone's in the same bar. And in an ideal world right now, it would be fantastic, right? Everyone on a GP 25, 24 point whatever, off you go. The racing would be 10 times more entertaining, because no disrespect to Firmin Aldeguer or Alex Marquez in a way, or Di Antonio Morbidelli. Aldeguer or anyone that's climbed on Ducati has just proved the point that if a Brad, a Fabio, Jean Mir to me still has a bit more to prove. Miller had his opportunity. Oliveira, no. But let's call out you got to throw Vinales in the hat now. Acosta, Binder, Zarco. Okay, well, Zarco also had his chance.
I would say just those 3. All the others you mentioned, they've had their turn on a Ducati.
Marini, they've all had it. So you put those 3 guys, Quartararo, those 4 guys. Put those 4 guys. All of a sudden, you got Marc Marquez, Alex Marquez, Pecco Bagnaia. You got a 7, 8, 9, kind of battle at the front. So, but it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And this is what I said in that comment that I said. It's not a Ducati Cup and so much Ducati's ruining the sport. It's that Yamaha, KTM, and Honda have let down their riders, because their riders are just as fast as everyone else. Maybe not overall. You're always going to get like the Marquez winning 8 world championships and stuff, but they're just as fast. But they don't have the machinery. So whose fault? That's not Ducati's fault. That's Yamaha, Honda, and everyone else's blame. So the Ducati Cup story for me needs to end, because it's not going to change. Thankfully, this weekend we saw a glimpse of Yamaha potentially turning a corner. Again, I try not to get too excited, because it's a Fabio track. it's a Yamaha track in many ways, a lot of corners, you're flowing a lot more, limited long straights and that. So it plays into Yamaha's hands. You've still got to climb on the bike and ride it. And Fabio, pole position, new lap record. Okay, got it wrong in the sprint race, came out and said my strategy was just this. That was my strategy for the sprint. I can hang it all out there. The main race, I've got to be a bit more strategic and stuff. And overall, we got a glimpse of the Fabio champion from 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. I was super impressed by him. He just looked good the whole weekend. And you and I have discussed it, and I'm sure many comments over the last year or so about him where he seems to lose his way. But suddenly this year, there's been a staff change, which we know about. And there's definitely been an improvement in the overall demeanor of the box. And I'm going to take nothing away from Alex Rins. He's just permanently injured and he doesn't seem to be getting ahead. But he has moments of glory where suddenly he jumps up to 5th, 6th, 7th on the timing sheet. So his one lap pace seems to be okay. But Quartararo seems to have taken this fight to Ducati, to Honda, to KTM, where he said, well, if I can't be on a Ducati, I'm going to be the next best. And this weekend he really looked good. Yeah, the track certainly suited them. But let's be quite honest. Once Bagnaia was in second, I thought, well, it's going to take him 3, 4, maybe 5 laps and he's going to smash Quartararo. Well, he never actually even got a chance to show him a front wheel. And in fact, the last third of the race, Fabio was pulling, I know it's only a 10th of a second, but over 6 or 8 laps, that's over half a second. He made sure that he didn't give Pecco any chance whatsoever once they kind of settled down. So I thought really a good weekend. And then obviously reading the comments after the testing yesterday, it seems like Yamaha are definitely heading in the right direction. And we know they didn't test the V4 yesterday. They only raced the new motor, which they're going to homologate to run at Le Mans this weekend. So it looks very good. They say they found 2 kilometers of top speed, which doesn't sound like much, but they're running 8 Ks behind generally on the fast tracks. Now with a bit of a draft, suddenly they're right there. So I think this is really, it's looking positive because we don't mind who it is. Throw more bikes in the mix. Bikes in the mix. I'm fully in agreement with, is a Ducati Cup. We've said it many times, don't criticize them. They're doing everything else. They're doing everything right. Everyone else has fallen behind. So, but good weekend for Yamaha, specifically for Quartararo.
Let's have a look at Trevor Dalglish. Don't you guys think that the pressure is getting to Mark? Everyone expects him to win. No, Trevor, I don't think it is. I just think he has these little, as I said, for me, I don't want an ego trip, but like a burst of ego to say, right, watch this, hold my dog fast and watch it move type thing, for our South African followers. It's basically hold my beer and watch this move I'm about to do. That's what it seemed like to me. I think the only pressure Mark has is on himself. He said that. He puts it all on himself. He knows he's on the best machine now. There's no more excuses for him. If Mark does not win the championship this year, it'll be a massive failing. I still firmly believe he is. And Ollie Motor, I agree with you. None of the other riders would beat Mark if they were on Ducatis. I still think Mark is that slight cut above the rest. I just think the racing would be closer. You'd have, more riders in the mix on the same machines. But Mark is still the man to beat. There's no doubt about it. He crashed out, climbed back on the bike after crashing with half the bike falling to pieces, and you still come up to 12th place. Passing Alacia Spargo, Alex Rins, full factory riders. Okay, Alacia Spargo, Bezzecchi, he crashing out, and so Mark is still a cut above the rest. It's going to your Pecco now. You're a little bit disappointed with Pecco because I like what he's doing. He's not making the mistakes that he did last year. And someone mentioned, about Joan Mir and Alex Marquez. You do need a consistency. Joan Mir won his title purely on consistency. Won one race and he won his title on the motor, then quickly kicked that person in the face with his stats, as he always does. Joan Mir didn't have to beat Marc Marquez, which absolutely.
Sure. Yeah,
it's true. It's absolutely true.
But Rob, you can only race who's there, and it was Mark's fault that he wasn't there. It wasn't Mir's fault.
No, listen, you can't take anything away from Jean Mir. He's got that number one. It'll be in the record books forever. It's a different kettle of fish now. Pecco Bagnaia is doing everything right in terms of, I can't win the race, so let me finish where I can finish. And he's done that up until now. The problem is, and I can't remember who put it on Facebook, and it sums it up perfectly. If you're going to beat Marc this year, you've got to take the best of what you can, and letting a Fabio Quartararo on a Yamaha beat you at Jerez when you're on a Ducati is not good enough. Pecco is not happy. He even in the testing now, he said, I'm still not getting the feeling out of the bike. And his comments are, I can't race this bike, as I touched upon earlier, especially when, all the turbulence, and when he's surrounded by bikes, he just can't get the feeling out of the bike. I loved what he did on the opening lap with Marc. I love to see that. And Pecco's not afraid to get his elbows out, and it was brilliant. Great mutual respect racing, fantastic. But then Pecco just can't maintain it. I don't know how he loses the feeling. I have a feeling that he's stressing too much about this tire pressure. I think he's kind of looking down, and then he's trying to manage that maybe too much instead of focusing. You know what I mean? Again, there's too many variables coming in that riders like Marc seem to manage easily. Maverick just threw it out the window at Qatar and went for the overall, result and picture there. But Pecco seems to be struggling to manage all of that that's coming at him at the moment. What's my tire pressure? Oh, the bike's not feeling great. It's essentially the same bike that he dominated last year on. But again, going back to Olimoto's comment, there wasn't a Marc Marquez on the best bike in there. So, Pecco's struggling a little bit. I still think he's managing himself and what he's saying perfectly, but he got let down a bit. You've got to be finishing. If you can't finish first, you've got to be finishing second, or at least not being beaten by anyone, not on a Ducati, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and also, Rob, going back to 2023, I'm going to highlight something that Jorge Martin said last year. So last year, 24, talking about 2023. He said he focused, and we've discussed it, he said he focused too much on the World Championship. He kind of didn't enjoy it. Last year, he changed his focus a little bit, enjoyed it more, won the championship. My opinion of Pecco, after all the test sessions, end of last year and the first two this year, got to the first race of the year in Thailand, Malaysia, wherever it was, and all he could think about was Marc Marquez.
Yes, Marc.
He didn't worry about anyone else, and he's still in that mold. He needs to change his thinking, exactly what you said. He shouldn't have been beaten by a Yamaha. That shouldn't have happened. But I think he's kind of got the mindset, oh, well, Marc's out, I'm okay. He's not thinking, damn it, I better race Alex Marquez as hard as I raced Jorge Martin last year and the year before, and Quartararo the year before that. Because if I only concentrate on Marc, and this thing goes pear-shaped for Marc, and I'm happy that, okay, Marc crashed, so I'm better than him this weekend. Before he knows it, Alex is going to win the championship. That's for Pecco. I'm not worried about what happens with Marc. For Pecco, to me, that's his mindset. He's only focusing on Marc. So when he sees Marc out, he's like, okay, that's fine. Third's good enough. I'm picking up 16, 15, whatever points it is. Instead of saying, well, if I get past Fabio, which I can guarantee you, if Marc had been third with Fabio in front of him, he would have had a go at him, definitely. Whether it worked or not, he would have given it a go. Now, I think Pecco needs to have the mindset, and we don't know if he has or hasn't, to say, I can't only worry about Marc Marquez. Alex Marquez is a bigger thorn in my side right now because he's 20 points ahead of me, and I've beaten him once in 8 events, 10 events. I've beaten him once. The rest is Alex has either finished second or he's won the race, and then obviously we know he finished 6th in Kota. Last week when he had Qatar when he had the incident with Ligia. So I think Pecco has to have a big mindset shift to say, I'm racing to win the championship. I'm racing everyone who's here, not just Marc Marquez. Because I think that's been his sole focus, and right now at the moment he's on the wrong path. But I agree with you. He needs to race 20 laps as hard as lap 1 or 2.
If I go back to our first conversation heading into round 1, the first Talking MotoGP we did, I kind of looked at the Marc Pecco relationship, and it was almost going too well. It's like, Jesus, these guys, such good friends, and Rossi and Lorenzo had that. There should be a rivalry with two, alphas, kind of thing. And I still mentioned it and I said, Marc's playing the perfect game here for me. No, I'm not the man to beat. This is Pecco's team. I'm going to go with Pecco's data, Pecco's development. He like kind of just threw everything on Pecco. and like you said, was quietly just, quietly confident, and, just being that little snake in the grass, almost like ready to pounce in a way. And as you said, I think Pecco has taken a lot of that on board, focused on Marc as right. Marc is my biggest thing. Alex has been a complete kind of spanner in the works, to be honest. No one saw it coming. I didn't see it coming. We all said, that's a great ride, first one. He needs to do it again. Second, but he needs to do it again. Now this guy's winning races, And I agree with you. I think Pecco, Oli Moto said it earlier, never mind being beaten by Fabio Quartararo, you shouldn't be beaten by Alex Marquez. You're on a full factory Ducati. You're the champion. Oli Moto's just made a bold statement here. Here's a prediction: Bagnaia won't win another title. I think if he keeps overclouding his thought process, to me, what really impacted Pecco Bagnaia is, and why he's playing it safe in some ways this year and going, with the bikes, overthinking things, I better just finish third. Marc's crashed, I better finish third. Is he lost the world title in a season where he dominated, and he picked up 13 wins, and he was the dominant rider. You know what I mean? He dominated last year, but he made too many mistakes. So now it almost seems like he's coming to this year as like, right, I cannot afford to make mistakes. And when now you start overthinking, last year was about winning races. Just go as fast as you can to win races and beat Martin. Now he's going, okay, I've got to manage Marc. I've got to not make mistakes. Oh, God, no, Alex is in the mix. Oh, what's Fabio doing here? Geez, how did Fabio get? You know what I mean? All that's starting to play on him. And it just looks like a guy that's, as you said, just needs to maybe take a step back, find the feeling with the bike. It's hard to find a feeling when your judgment's just clouded over and you've got all these things coming at you. Take a step back, trust your ability, know what you've done, know that you can look at Alex Marquez and go, instead of going, God, this guy's fast, how are we going to beat him? Go, I own this guy. I've owned him since we got into MotoGP. Same with Fabio. I've owned this guy. Same with Marc. I've beaten Marc. I can beat Marc. Just seems like he's doubting himself a little bit. So he needs to sort that out, because otherwise he could be in a situation, as Oli Moto says, where, you blink and it's 5 years down the line. Marc's won 4 of them. Fabio's maybe picked up 1, or Brad's won 6 of them, and no one's won anything. He found himself in that situation, and then it's just a downward spiral from there.
Well, I mean, he certainly hasn't looked like he's going to win this championship. Yes, he won in Kota because Marc crashed, but other than that, it's not like he's looked like a guy who's if Marc doesn't win it, he's definitely going to win it. Right now, he's third in the pecking order. There's no doubt. And I mean, we've just said it earlier. We're 5 races in already. It feels like, last week was the first race.
Yeah.
After Le Mans, we're nearly a third of the way through the season. And Pecco keeps saying he hasn't found something that he's comfortable with. Is he now looking at, I'm not saying he's making excuses, but is he, like you've highlighted now, is he overthinking it? Is he not just saying, okay, this bike is good, it works, it does everything I want, I'm going to get on and go as fast as I can? I definitely think whether it's Alex or Marc or both, they've got to him somehow, and now he's a little bit rattled, and we haven't seen him rattled, because even though he didn't win last year, he had a leg up over Jorge Martin. There's absolutely no doubt. You can't win 11 Sunday races and not say you were, yes, I know, and I think it's Oli Moto will show the stats. Jorge Martin won the championship. Most points, that's all that counts. But Pecco was the most winningest rider.
Mm-hmm.
Now his mindset, he's struggling, so he needs to focus back on what he needs to do, which is win the championship, not beat Marc Marquez. Yes, he's got to beat him, and not beat Alex Marquez. He needs to have a serious rethink, which when he raced Jorge Martin, I think he like you said, he knew he owned Martin. He knew it. So it didn't worry him. Now suddenly he's doubting himself, and he hasn't got a Martin to worry about. Now I think as I say, I think he's focused only on Marc, left Alex all alone, and suddenly he's like, now we've got a double problem. And it's going to be difficult for him to sort it out, because now he's starting to doubt his bike.
Yes.
He's on the same bike as them, so now is it the bike? Is it me? Are they just better? So it can get into his head very quickly. So he's going to have to do some serious introspection for the next couple of races to pull himself out of the little hole that he's starting to dig.
Yeah, Rainer Albrecht, the Marc Marquez man who I bought a Valentino Rossi shirt for when I was in Italy. Gents, honest thoughts, are Pecco's days numbered? Now, to quickly summarize that, Pecco's days aren't numbered. He's going to be a top-class MotoGP rider, and he's a quality world champion. He's proved that. He's going to be competitive. I think he needs to find that belief and that trust in himself again. We must also remember, as Ollie Moto and a lot of people, Reino, a lot of people will point out, he's going up against a completely different animal here. A fit, healthy, fast, determined Marc Marquez on the best motorcycle. Carl Crutchlow said it 2 years ago. We've said it for a long time. Put Marc on the best bike in the best team, and this is better. I think if Marc, in some ways, Marc has already said it. This team's better than the HRC team and the bike that he had. Marc rode that bike to the world title. This bike's going to ride him to the world title in many ways, And another thing for Pecco, it's for years now, he's come in and looked at his data, and his data has generally been the top data. Yeah, then Martin, and he could pull, and they seemed very similar in many ways, and they could pull. And this is me just using my own life experience. I'm nowhere near on that level, I know that, but I remember being Sheridan Moraes' teammate, and you would come in and Shez would be doing a 148 at Kyalami, and I'm on the exact same motorbike built by Ricky Moraes, the exact same tire pressure, and I'm a second and a half off the pace. And no matter what I do, I just go, so, okay, let's try Sheridan's settings. It should work. Then I'm on the exact same bike as he. And I would go slower. But then you start, okay, it's me. You know what I mean? How is he going through? And this is what Pecco's doing. How is Marc going through that left-hander that fast? There's someone looking after him. As soon as you start thinking like that, looking at that data going, God, I'm on the absolute limit then. It feels like I'm going to be sent to another universe if I push any harder. And Marc's going a tenth or whatever it is, faster than me on the same tires, everything. It's all those factors that I think, as I said, just coming at Pecco from every single angle. He needs to just sit back. As Jean Creel says here, he's publicly saying, I don't have the feeling with the bike. But I think that's more, as you said, of just everything coming at him. And then you don't find excuses, but those little chinks start to creep in. When you're happy and winning, you forget about the bike. The bike could actually be crap, but you're just doing well on it. Hey, life's great. But when you're not winning, that's when you pull at things. You find whatever you can. So I think Pecco will come right. I don't think his days are numbered. I think MotoGP in general, with Marc Marquez in that team and the way it is, it's going to be hard for anyone to beat him. If Brad Binder wasn't on Ducati, it would be hard. As much as we love him, it's going to be hard. Marc Marquez, the reason why Ducati went with Marc Marquez over the world champion who won on their motorcycle is purely because it's Marc Marquez. And Pecco's got to somehow overcome that, put himself on that level and that status, believe in himself again and say, right, I'm coming for you. Yeah. Rather than, as you said, over-focusing on certain things. Let's have a look here. Andre Calvert. I don't think his excuses, he doesn't look comfortable on the bike. I agree he doesn't look as comfortable, but I think that could be a mental block in many ways.
Well, like you said, Rob, when things are going well, he's not going to, if he, like last year when he was winning so many races, he's not going to say, hey, I haven't got a great feeling on the bike. He's going to say, geez, that was a great race and I really felt good, even if he was suffering from those odd problems last year. This year, because he's not winning, he's trying to justify almost why he's not winning.
Yes.
I think that's the difference where, he might be suffering from exactly the same problem he had last year, but last year he only had, and I say only with all due respect, he had Jorge Martin to race against. Yes, Marc was there, but we know that bike was, just look at Bezecchi on that bike last year. He was nowhere. So that's a more accurate reflection. Now they're on equal equipment and Alex, and suddenly he's got twice as many guys ahead of him in the championship that he has to fight. So different kettle of fish for him. I think it's a mental shift. I honestly believe, no doubt, he's got the talent, the speed, the equipment. He can't argue about that. Mm-hmm. He now needs to focus on how he's going to beat them, and not solely, I need to beat Marc. As I said, he needs to open his blinkers a little bit and say, there's another oak in this championship who, as much as we said at the beginning of the year, Alex has to prove himself. Well, he's done that by leaps and bounds in the first 5 races of this year. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Pecco deals with this going forward.
Speaking about Alex Marquez, fan or not, you have to be happy for the guy. he does. We do. I've criticized him. A lot of people have criticized him. Is he worthy of being there? In many cases, I did think he was spoon-fed a lot of stuff because of his surname and stuff. And I think in reality, deep down, he would probably know that as well. But he is a two-time world champion. I was amazed at the stat when I think it was Neil Hodgson was talking. People write him off. He's a two-time world champion, won 12 Grand Prix. And I was like, well, that's why we write him off, because, 2 world champions is great, but 12 Grand Prix the guy's been around for like 100 million years. But, it shows his consistency, and it shows a lot towards him. But I looked at him this weekend and I went, you know what? You just have to take your hat off to the guy. He looks comfortable. He looks fast. He looks happy. He's getting the results. He's doing everything right. He's, as you said earlier, he's not buckling under the pressure. I saw a robust Alex Marquez this weekend. He crashed himself broken in some of those sessions, tore himself to pieces, climbs back on that bike and breaks the lap record, and then goes on to qualify well, and then goes on to win the race. In all that chaos of your brother's big We Are 93 stand, where a couple of blue shirts are like mingling in there, the Bagnaia, you're not this headline that you actually deserve to be. Doesn't fuss him. You said it. I kept saying, in the Grassini team, no, that's the end of Alex. He's going to be overshadowed by his brother. And you were the one that said, I think he's kind of moved on from that. I don't think it fusses him anymore, and he's just happy to be where he is and racing. And watching a couple of the documentaries and watching him talking, it's exactly what it is. It's like, Mark's Mark. No one's going to beat Mark. You cannot compete with Mark. Yeah. And I think this is a little bit the Pecco problem. As soon as you kind of stop over processing the trying to compete with Mark, you can compete with Mark. And this is what Alex has done now. In the races where I can't compete with Mark, second. You know what? I'm actually the winner. Mark's in his own league, but I've won. And you see, he celebrates those second places. But for him to now go and get that win, and he said it perfectly. Once I saw Mark kind of go out, I knew I had everyone. I knew I had the bike. I had the feeling. That pass that he did on Fabio Quartararo, because I was kind of thinking, okay, this is cool. I know you got the extra pace, but where are you going to pass this guy? This guy's got corner speed. He's braking late. He's got fresh tire. At that stage, I didn't know Fabio Quartararo's status with his tire pressure. Did they set it for him leading? Did they set it for him being, so in a way, it did seem like Fabio broke early because maybe tire pressure. I don't know what it was, but Alex Marquez, just the faith and the confidence that he had to put that move on is, oh man, I was impressed. Like I said, whether you're a fan or not, you've got to take your hat off to Alex, especially how he put this weekend and how he's put his season together so far. And there's no reason why we can't not talk about him in the bigger championship picture.
Well, Rob, we couldn't after the first round because I'm going to almost say we all thought it was a fluke. Then the second round, we were like, okay, maybe he's a little bit more serious. Then the third round, 100% he's a title contender. Fourth round, he had a bit of a brain fart moment. We all saw that. Fifth round, he goes in second and first. And he's doing exactly what you said. He's racing to win this championship. Let Mark take care of Mark, and I'll do the rest.
Yeah.
He's been, and understand, we've got the Gianantonio, Morbidelli, and Furman Aldegar. Okay, Furman, for a rookie, is doing exceptionally well, but they're on the same equipment as him. And Morbidelli and the Gianantonio, maybe we should be thinking they're slightly better than Alex. Well, he's drilling them fair and square. He's making them look like beginners. And I think all credit to him. Something's clicked. Look, he's got a very, very close relationship with Mark, and they're open to say that Sunday night to Thursday evening, they discuss things. Race weekend, they don't. So obviously Mark's helping him. Mark would love to see him beat everyone else except Mark. So clearly he's helping him. But it doesn't help, like you said with your example with Sheridan. If Sheridan had come to you and said, listen, no matter what, Rob, just go faster through turn 4. If you can't do it, you can't do it. Something's clicked with Alex, that he's realized that it's a complete package. You don't have to just be fast in turn 4 as an example, whatever the case might be. Something has gelled. We've said it before with the Gianantonio before he won his first race. Once they've done it once, don't do it once, do it twice. Don't do it twice, do it 3 times. Alex has proved this whole season. He's been second, sixth, second, first. that you can't beat that record. I mean, that's fantastic. So he's gelled with everything. And like you've often said, Grassini, Bezzecchi won with them.
Yeah.
De Gio won with them. And Naya Bastianini won with them. There's something about that non-factory but factory environment. They've got everything they need, but not the pressure. If he doesn't win, it doesn't matter. Yes, they want him to win, but no one's going to be going there with a big stick and shouting and screaming like if Marc or Pecco don't win.
Yes.
So definitely that environment is just works for him, and it's brought the best out of him, which surprised all of us. There's absolutely no doubt.
Just a big thanks to Michael White for clearing up why I was 1.5 seconds slower than Sheridan. So I was 20 kilos heavier than him. I've always had bigger biceps and muscles than Sheridan. It is what it is. Paul, your conversation there leads us perfectly into another conversation that lends itself there, that environment. Now, if we look at KTM, the KTM picture at the moment, the best performing KTM is on a Tech 3 KTM. Yeah, full factory. They all got the same bikes, full factory. But as you said, it's that environment. It's your mechanics. It's everything. It's that environment of the it's a factory team, but it's a non-factory team. It's run by Hervé Poncharal, basically. And if we cast our minds back to last year, Brad Binder was the best overall performing KTM. Love it. That's our boy. Love him. Pedro Acosta, we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, performed better in that environment, seems to be struggling in the full factory environment. Maverick Vinales, did okay at Aprilia. We've spoken about Maverick all day long. Yamaha flopped it, whatever. Suzuki kind of did well when he came into MotoGP. Now seems to find himself in an environment where he can thrive, and he is thriving. He's the top. If you had told me at the beginning of the season that 5 rounds in, Maverick Vinales would be the top KTM, I would have found something close to me to hit you as hard as I could have, because I just wouldn't have believed you. I was doubting whether we had made it 5 rounds with his attitude.
Yeah.
But to his credit, to the team's credit, they seem to have gelled. They seem to have provided an environment for him to go shine. And you know what? I think Wayne Taylor mentioned it earlier, and I mentioned it on Facebook. People go on about, why is Maverick the top performing KTM? It's not. First of all, I'm happy just to see that he's backed up the Qatar performance, because I didn't want to take too much into the tire pressure, because I was like, does the tire pressure really make that? But then if he didn't back it up, it was like, oh, well, clearly it was a tire pressure. I'm glad he backed it up. It wasn't ultimately the grandest. He wasn't in the podium battle as he was in Qatar, but it was certainly a good sign, especially that main race. He closed on Pecco and them, and he was in the mix for that podium. He was not far away from that podium fight. So I take confidence in the fact that a KTM was up there. Yes, it wasn't our Brad. I want Brad to always be the first KTM in the Brad. But the KTM's up there, so they're finding something. Hopefully they can translate from Tech 3 to the factory team. I hope it's not just the case of a better working environment and then too much pressure from Pit Barra sitting in the full factory KTM team like this, and Hervé Poncharal's maybe a bit, I don't know what it is. But there seems to be something there, because ultimately, Brad, probably his best weekend so far, although Kota was going to be his best weekend, but with a problem. Acosta, I said it a couple of rounds ago, Paul. I think he switched off to that project already. I just think he's thinking the money, and he's thinking exit for next season. But anyway, he was there, and Bastianini. So I think it was all 4 KTMs inside the top 10. So, as I said, a much more positive weekend, and we can talk positively about KTM for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly what you said last week in Qatar, we were like, could the tire pressure have made such a difference to Maverick? We've kind of seen now that it was obviously transgressing the rule. I don't think it made that much of a difference. This week we saw that. And as you say, fourth, what worries me a little bit, not about Maverick. Maverick has blown me away 2 good weekends in a row. That's very unlike him. I don't even think he did that on the Aprilia. But anyway, and what worries me a little bit, I think he was 7 seconds ahead of Brad.
Yeah.
That's quite a big gap. But the point is exactly what you say, Rob. There's definitely been, everybody's improved on the KTM side. So now is it, that positivity breeds positivity, negativity breeds negativity. So for those who tuned in and listened to your talk with Bjorn last week, he, without a shadow of a doubt, if you had any doubt that KTM were 100% in MotoGP, he put those fears to rest. He said everybody there is working 100%. So now they've realized that maybe whatever Maverick is suggesting, maybe the package is changing in the right direction now. Maybe it was wrong of them to, and Bjorn said it wasn't the case, but it was public knowledge then that they were going Pedro's route towards the end of last season. Maybe they've realized that, let's focus. Maverick clearly has way more experience. Maybe what he's doing on the KTM is working, and it's a direction they weren't too sure what to do. And now they're saying, okay, let's go that way, because everybody seems to be moving. I agree with you with Pedro. I think he needs to find himself again. And if he's signing that contract, sign it, be done with it, and concentrate on this year. But I think KTM are looking a lot better. We were worried that they were going to be finishing 20 seconds, 16 seconds behind, but Mavericks moved that project. And like you say, is it that environment of the non-factory team? I can't believe it makes such a big difference, but maybe it does. Exactly what you say. Is Pit Byra only sitting in Brad's box? When I say Brad, factory KTM, glaring at them, expecting, and Maverick and Bastianini are allowed to do whatever they want, kind of. That's something we can't answer, but certainly we've had two way better weekends than we had of the first three. So looking a little bit more positive. We just need that, whatever it is, to fall onto Brad's bike, that suddenly he's back at being the top KTM.
Like Ollie Moto says, it's brilliant what Vinales is doing. And I don't want to get over myself, too overconfident, same as Fabio with Yamaha. You want to see it more and more around. You want to see the consistency there, which is something certainly Mavericks battled with and KTM have battled with. So it's an ongoing conversation for sure. And here we all said Mav is going to rev the KTM towards its exit. Well, that's what I said. I would have found something close by and hit you with it, because I didn't think Maverick would last this long. I certainly didn't think Bastianini would be the worst of them, to be honest, and Pedro be where he is, to be honest. But watching from Qatar and watching here at Spain as well, it definitely seems to be, there's still the issue of the vibration and the chatter. That's it. That's still evident with all of them, and this grip level, especially on the side of the tire. Now, if you look at the weekend, that last sector, certainly Brad really battled with, and that's when you're on the edge of the tire for the longest, those fast rights and the rear. And you can see Brad and Pedro to an extent that just always moving, that just breaks that little bit of traction. So when you want to be getting and rolling on the throttle, you're always managing the throttle, because of the feeling you're getting from the tire. Maverick's riding style, the way he rode in Qatar and at Jerez, definitely seems to, the chatter and the vibrations there, but it's more manageable because of the way I'm riding the bike. So more, but kind of like what I said with Pedro, that more direct. Pedro's, you said, he's just lost something, whether it's confidence, and he's like, okay, listen, I've got to stop crashing now. I've got to change a few things. So he's in that, kind of trying to adapt and change, almost like what he should have been doing in his rookie year. He's kind of doing now, whereas last year he just went balls to the wall. So Maverick's riding style, I think, manages the KTM's disadvantages a bit better, whereas a Brad's aggressive, backing it in, making the corner slightly longer, seems to highlight or, just emphasize those problems a bit more. So that's the positive side. And I think if they can find a happy medium, someone was asking about the testing, it's hard to take the testing. Maverick was fast in testing. He's always been fast. You could put Maverick on a tricycle and he'd go fast in testing. He did it again now. But it was good to see that he went again low 36s, which was really fast times for Jerez, and he came out with positive sayings. Brad, I know we always get buoyed up with Brad going, we went through the whole program, we tested a lot of things, and we certainly found some things. I want to believe, you know what I mean? I want to believe you. We've heard it before. Brad puts on that positive outlook all the time. I want to see it translated into results now. One thing, again, from the Bjorn conversation that we had last week was interesting, that, Bjorn was pretty straightforward about it, is that we're letting him down. We as a team are letting
Yeah.
Brad down. We're not
Yeah.
giving him the tools. In many ways, kind of agreeing with the sentiment of us and a lot of people in saying, listen, stop this throwing parts and, find a base and then work towards, there's just a bit too much chaos going on around the system. So I thought it was brave of Bjorn to come out and say that. To be honest, I didn't think we'd get that kind of honesty, but that's definitely the feeling from the inside and the outside of the pit is right. Got to just find a little bit of consistency, a little bit of common ground here, find that balance. If I look at what Ducati brought to testing this on Monday yesterday, it was, I don't even think hardly anything, one or two little things, but, Aprilia are bringing a new rear wing, a carbon fiber swing arm. KTM tried 3 different aero types and this vibration management box on the back again. So they're still all over the place, where Ducati are just, they found their direction. So it's not as easy as that, but KTM just need to find that direction, and I'm hoping that whatever Maverick's doing right can translate itself. But I still do think, watching why Maverick's getting the best out of it is that riding style, and I do think it's the bike, KTM sorting out the vibration and that, because then Maverick will probably go even faster. But deep down, I still look at it and go, okay, there's still some sorting out Brad and Pedro need to do, maybe with their riding style, to get the best out of it. Bastianini as well. I mean, Bastianini looks amazing. He's got the end of the race pace. He just, exactly like Brad, can't get a fast lap out of that bike. Mark Lloyd now was part of the team, Brad's team last year. He's moved on since there. So Mark's made a very much appreciated comment here. Mark, test was positive. Didn't do a time attack at the end, so position didn't reflect progress. So that's really good information. Thank you so much for that, Mark. And that's the feeling we got from coming out of it. But she said, we've heard this before. I want to see results now.
Yeah. And Rob, it's testing. So without us having an agenda that says Brad's doing A, B, and C and Maverick's doing D, E, and F, you can't do anything. One thing I do know for sure, in the afternoon, Marc Marquez definitely did a time attack, put on soft tires and gave it a go. So now we know Brad didn't do that. One thing I noticed this weekend, which it was kind of prominent in Qatar, but I think Qatar allows for smoother style. Maverick looked smooth. He's always been, I think, a very smooth rider, but this weekend he just looked stable and smooth. Now, I just want to highlight to someone who might be thinking, but why has Brad's bike changed from the 2023 to last year and this year? What's changed? What's actually changed is the compound of the tires. The bike itself is I'm going to say 99% the same. They just can't adapt to this new tire, and that's what's giving them this chatter. And that's why if I was listening once again at Oxley Bomb podcast, where they explain the sound wave of the tire once it starts to chatter at the back. The only way you can stop that tire, because it what's the right word? It goes out of shape.
Yeah.
The only way you can stop that is to roll the throttle off. Okay. Now, who's going to do that out of a corner? It's just not. So they try and override that, or when they're coming into the corner. So the bike itself, I think, fundamentally is a good bike. This new tire, which was last year, we know, has caused more problems for KTM than it seems anyone else. And if anything else, yes, their bike has changed. We know that. Aero, electronics, that gets updated all the time. But I think they're struggling the most. And the point I'm trying to make is, if this new tire clearly doesn't like Brad's aggressive sideways into the turn style, where Maverick, looking as smooth as he does, maybe it's allowing the bike less chatter or less vibration,
manageable,
because it's smoother into the corner, where once Brad gets it sideways, and all the aerodynamic oaks will tell you that bike's designed now with all the aero to go in a straight line. The downforce is there to create as much downforce into the braking zone. But when it's on its side, it doesn't like that. Now, Brad's sideways, the bike's upright, but trying to lean it. It's kind of almost like contradicting what the whole thing is designed to do. And I'm not saying that's his problem. I wish it was as easy as that. But certainly looking at Maverick and the way he's riding the bike, with whatever progress they're making, seems to be the right direction.
Apologies to Mark Lloyd, because he's just corrected me. Robert was Johnny who left. I'm still with Brad. Sorry, Mark. I know. I knew that. You just all look the same in orange.
And Brad just in and he's like, yes, Mark's left. What the hell? They haven't told me.
I've just caused the complete frenzy. His wife's watching it, muttering him across the head with a teacup, saying, "You didn't tell me you lost your job when you left." But, yes, sorry about
yes,
that.
let it drop a oak in the poo.
They all look the same in orange. They really do. And they all speak the same because most of them are all Brits. But yeah, Mark, looking forward to seeing you at.
Okay, Mark, answer this question. When are they bolting a set of Olins onto that KTM? Please tell us.
Yeah, now you interfere. Now Pit Byra's watching this.
Pit, phone me. I'll send you my number.
You could. Now we're causing cut. Let's stop causing cut and let's carry on talking MotoGP. Okay. But anyway, yeah, positives to come from KTM. Great info from Mark with the test program. I did watch the test highlights on the MotoGP channel today. I think it was Maverick and Acosta who tried some different electronics in that settings, and Brad and Bastianini tried a different couple of aeros and tweaks here and there. So certainly still working hard, and good to see that there was a bit of improvement. Good to see that Brad had a smile on his face, and he was rewarded in many ways because he's putting in a lot of hard work, and the team that sixth place was a good result, a better result, and they can now build from there. Maverick in fourth was brilliant. DJ Antonio in fifth. I mean, we could talk about him just doing a stellar job at the moment, consistent.
Also, guy needs to qualify better.
Yeah,
he's qualifying too far down to give him that advantage to run nearer the front. So he's halfway to end of race pace is great, but he's doing himself no justice by qualifying in 10th, 11th, 12th, and then trying to work his way through.
Exactly. Sorry, I got distracted by this question, and again, Mark's going to we might as well just get Mark on the show right now. He's going to answer everything for us. Didn't the KTM change to a different firing order? I know they came in with that, was it last year or the year before, that super engine that was going to do everything. Listen, speed's no problem, but I think I touched upon it a couple of weeks ago when we spoke, when I went to Portimao, and coming over that crest, the way the electronics cut the power, and it definitely not as smooth a process as the Ducatis and others. So Paul with an absolute, there we go, he has a comment here from Carlos LF. Paul with an absolute mamba of a question, the big one, Olins 100%. KTM must know it would be great. They just don't want to do it. Yeah, obviously it's not as easy as just going and buying Olins. You made a very good point a couple of weeks ago, Paul, whereas I'm pretty sure Olins would probably go, no, we're not giving you Olins. What, so that you can copy our technology and put it on your your WP suspension? Not going to happen. So, but like everyone, and Brian Ritchie says, yeah, I'm excited for 2027. I think it's a fresh start for KTM. I think Pirelli's, as you said, you've just touched upon it now, Paul. You can see the regression as Michelin have changed their tires over the last couple of years. Certainly it's impacted the KTMs the most. So hopefully that getting onto Pirelli's, being a bit more of a user-friendly tire, it seems, Pirelli, if I look at World Superbikes and over the years, my experience just racing with a Michelin, a Dunlop and a Pirelli, and that the Pirelli definitely was, you could plug and play. You put that on and you just had a great feeling and it just worked, If you wanted, sometimes you'd go with a Michelin front for more stability and something, but generally the Pirelli was such a good adaptable tire. So I'm looking forward to that. I think everyone is. A big talking point, quickly, Paul, I made a note and I wanted to bring it up about Pecco and Marc Marquez quickly before I get on to Aprilia and Bezzecchi and everyone. So I was lucky enough to be at Misano working on the weekend for Zero Motorcycles Ride Fest. So basically it's EICMA, which is the biggest motorcycle show in the world. It happens every November. It's in the halls. Every manufacturer gets to showcase their products and blah, blah, blah. Great. This is basically a test ride version of that. So you're outside, you got your tents, you got your bikes, people come sign up and you let them go ride. Great. Fantastic opportunity. Another great bucket list moment experience. Brilliant. Literally just walking around, and Troy Bayliss is walking around like a spectator, fanboy moment. Oh, Troy, I love you, yay! And then you got Bulliger's just walking around, and Antonio Cairoli and Kevin Schwantz next minutes walking. It was just, it was overwhelming in many ways. But I got to sit and watch on the giant main screen the sprint race because I left Saturday night. Marco Melandri and two other Italian guys came on, and they were the presenters. And then everyone, literally, it was like being in church. Everyone sat down on the floor, made yourself comfortable, 29 degrees, boiling hot. So, okay, sit down, let's watch the MotoGP now. But before the race started, Now remember, I'm in Italy, Misano, home of the VR46 Academy, Valentino Rossi, Italian motorsport, Pecco Bagnaia, the home of them. Marco Melandri and the other presenters go down into the crowd and say, right, who's going to win the sprint race? Who's your money on? Every single person answered Marc Marquez. Every single Italian answered Marc Marquez. Melandri and this other guy was more animated. They went ballistic. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
What about Pecco Bagnaia? And these guys were just like, we love you. I don't speak Italian, but I kind of got the gist of it. Like, we love Pecco, but you cannot be. So you go into the Pecco conversation just again. If your own fans, your hometown are sitting there,
your hometown.
You know, this is the power of Marc Marquez. People talk about MotoGP not being exciting, whatever. Record crowd, 260.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to Jerez. It's the size of Boxburg Lake, and they put 260,000 people in that place.
Yeah.
My goodness. So
I
want to hear that comment, but this is the resurgence of motor. We were all worried, and it did have an impact when Rossi left. It did. Mugello had 10 people in it that one year when it did. But the resurgence of Marc has just lifted, and Alex to a point has just lifted. Okay, yes, of course we're in Spain in the backyard, but don't tell me MotoGP is dying when 260,000 people go spend their hard money to sit in the sun and watch. Anyway, that was just a topic that I
interesting.
Couldn't believe it. I was waiting for arrows and guns to people. It was incredible.
Well, Rob, just on that point, sorry, I'm interrupting you. In 2019, we were at Misano, and I bought an HRC cap, surprise, surprise, and an HRC shirt, and I wore it on the Sunday. And the Sunday was the main race was between Quartararo and Marc. People were spitting at me. I was wearing Honda stuff.
Really?
That's in Misano. So you must know, for them to shout or to say Marc's going to win in Misano, that just shows how he's turned the crowd. I don't say they support him, but they realize the talent. And that's the point I think you and I have tried to highlight all along. You don't have to like the oak, but don't hate him, appreciate for what he does. But that's an absolute fact. People spat at me because I was wearing Honda stuff, and Marc won that day. So just to say,
No, I must say it was my first real interaction with the Italian public, and they are just so passionate. My goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
What happened about the pit exit incident with Marc and Alex, Paolo Cecchetti? Of course, we can't overlook this. Let's quickly touch upon that before we get into my comments on Bezzecchi and Aprilia. I looked at it, and I think it was just blown out of proportion, to be honest. Yes, I mean, Marc tried to stop. Yes, they went through. People are saying it should have been a long lap penalty. They got a €2,000 fine. For me, enough. They rode out a pit lane. That marshal with that red flag could have been a split. They don't show that light going on or the red flag. That guy could have been a split second late. Did they gain an advantage? Is it the end of the world? To me, it was like, okay, they broke a small rule and they got a fine for it. Typical Dorna and Marquez. I agree. Dorna get it wrong sometimes, and I agree in that they show favoritism. But going over a red flag and a red line, come on.
Talking about pressure, it was his teammate who ran to the headmaster to tell him. So you don't want to highlight the little nuances creeping in, but that's certainly a pressure point because
when you're back against the wall.
100%, now let's divert a little bit of pressure onto Marc and see what happens. Marc's like, and I read somewhere in one of the comments on one of the social media things, if that role had been reversed, under no circumstances would Marc even have batted an eyelid. If Oak wants to go through on the red flag, so what? I'll drill him on the track. So little nuances of pressure possibly creeping in, possibly.
You got to take your wins wherever you can. At that level, and that I think Pecco's overthinking it. We've touched upon it. Olimoto, Marquez hasn't won me over. Don't hate him, but I won't want him to win. No thanks. So my mission, Paul, is hopefully I'm going to see Olimoto at Silverstone. I want to get a picture of him wearing a Marquez cap.
I'm going to DHL my cap to you. You take it with for him to wear.
Are you listening to me? I'm going to make this
with a 5 liter of petrol to pour on it.
So if you see me with a black eye doing the Tuesday podcast,
Yeah, Rob. Before you say anything, have you met him before? How big is he?
no, he's I have met him before.
Can you run faster than him?
No. Well, I'm back into my football and my knees feeling good. Probably, but I would go with I would go with power. I would just use whatever. I think I could overpower him, to be honest.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, let's not get to that.
He's my China and I love him. Yeah, but anyway, the Aprilias. Here we go, Carlos. The Aprilias, before the year started, they were touted, looked so good. But what happened? Did they put all their eggs in the Martinator basket? So, a Marquez cap, how much are we talking for charity, Oli Moto? There, you see, good answer, Oli Moto. We'll have the conversation.
Yeah, we'll discuss it.
Yeah. So, looking at the Aprilia picture, Paul, this is how I break it down. I remember the conversation clearly. Before the testing happened, and while the testing was happening, Martin had the crash and he was out. And then Bezzecchi actually had a decent Sepang test, if I remember. And I still remember coming out going, I've never looked at Bezzecchi as someone who could lead a team. I think he fits in and he likes to be managed. And don't put me in the spotlight. Don't put too much pressure on me. Let me do my own thing. And I still kind of corrected myself and said, geez, I got it wrong. I didn't think Bezzecchi would be able to lead Aprilia, and he's done a fantastic job. Until now, it seems like that is coming to the floor. Bezzecchi is not a team leader, especially and I mean this with all due respect to me, a factory team leader. You know, he's always wanted a factory ride. You know, these riders always talk about wanting factory rides. The problem with Bezzecchi is he put this, what's the word I'm looking for? He put this thought pattern on himself when he rejected the Pramac ride to stay with a 1 year older Ducati because of the VR46 environment, because he felt comfortable. He's that kind of rider that needs to be cuddled and looked after. Now he's in a full factory team. The number one guy, cool, you be the number one, Martin. I'll just be in the background here and get my odd good result, and you have the spotlight. No. Martin's out. You're the spotlight. You're the leader of Aprilia now. You have to be, everything counts on you. Let's go. Seemed to work at the beginning, but the cracks are there now. And I think he'll be the first one desperate for Martin to come back, because he's, Ayagura has been the main man up until now. Jerez, another not so good weekend for Bezzecchi. Glimpses, but it's not good enough for full factory Aprilia.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I can't add anything to that conversation because I agree 100%. I think the biggest mistake he made was when he decided to stay with VR46 going into 24, was it? And it didn't work out for him. So it kind of put him in a different headspace. Yes. This year, I think he was delighted to get the factory ride. Martin was going to be the glory boy, and he could ride on Martin's coattails. He didn't have to lead the project. Circumstances has depicted that he needs to lead the project, and he can't. There's no doubt. Right now in the championship, and I know it's only a 1 or 2 point difference, but Ayagura, a rookie, is ahead of him in the championship.
Yeah,
he's been more consistent. Yes, but Bezzecchi was unlucky on the weekend. He got punted wide and in the first or second corner, and it put him back. At the end of the race, his race pace was a 10th or 2/10 slower than Marc Marquez at the end, the last 4 or 5 laps. So he certainly had the pace. But don't tell me you got the pace when you're running in 15th, 14th, 13th place. He hasn't given us any reason to say he's going to step it up. So I'm a bit disappointed, but I was disappointed with him last year. He really, when I say let me down, I've always felt he's super talented. And that year with Cristini, or 2 years, he showed proper glimpses of how good he really is. And it just seems last year and this year not gelling for whatever the reason is. And he should have stepped up, because there's nothing he can do about Martin not being there. It's not like he can wish the oak back on the bike. There's no ways they can let Savadori run that project. No. So I think when he was asked to step up to the plate, he's just shown that is a level just a little bit out of his comfort zone, and he can't get there. And it's disappointing. On a more positive note, I think things are looking better for Jorge Martin than initially reported.
Yes.
The internal injury of which you've had and I've had, the lung is 100%. Most of the broken ribs are healed. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think we'll see him this weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think, is it Silverstone after? I think he'll be there. So, and that'll take a little bit of the weight off Bezecchi's shoulders, just a little bit, because the focus will go back to Martin, which we saw in Qatar. As much as he was qualifying, I don't know where he qualified in Qatar, Martin, at 15th or 14th, the highlight was all about him. Takes the spotlight off Bezecchi, and I think he kind of wants to crawl back into that headspace. And I'm going to say, disappointingly, I would never have said, and he's not injured, I would never have said that Agura would be ahead of him. Not at all. And I mean, no disrespect to Agura. He's really shown that he can up his game, compare him to his teammate. So no disrespect to him, but Bezecchi should be putting him away week after week without any question.
Yeah, it's MotoGP France next weekend. It is not still 2 weeks. Yeah, it's next week.
2 weeks time. Yeah, sorry, 2 weeks time.
Yeah, next weekend. Yeah. Just an interesting comment here from Robert Swart, and it's just so true. If you want to really know how the machine can make a difference in MotoGP at the moment, if you look at the likes of Bagnaia, Bezecchi, and Luca Marini, who I've highlighted as well, it kind of just proved the point. Marini came into MotoGP, was on a Ducati even back then, and was on pole positions and battling top 5 and whatever. Bastianini was winning races and full factory Ducati. Bezecchi was, not on those bikes anymore, and look where they are, and that's where the conversation of, imagine Brad on a Ducati or Fabio on a Ducati. That's why it comes in, because we all know it's plain to see there for everyone. Wayne Taylor, Agura is the right attributes to be a leader one day. Very calm, very cool, calm and collected and calculated. Yeah, I could see that move happening. I do feel for Aprilia, obviously, with the Martin. It's just, it was supposed to be their golden ticket, the number one rider, number one on their bike, Jorge Martin, all their, the speed and the everything that comes with him. And it's just been a failed exercise at the moment. As you said, it doesn't seem like it's all doom and gloom as it was predicted for Jorge Martin, although he's only just got back to Europe now. So it's been a long, hard time, and that hits you. It has to hit you, he'll be sitting there watching it, dealing with those injuries, dealing with the fact that he's the champion and he's not really even in the conversation anymore. Yeah, he gets mentioned in that, but until you talk about him, you forget that he was supposed to be there this week, and that's going to be hard for him to deal with as the champion. He's going to really have to just dig deep and go through what, in many ways, like how the paddocks come together and Pecco's reached out to him, Mark's reached out, but in many ways he's going to have to go in a much smaller way what Mark had to go through, where you're sitting there going, Jesus, could this be the end of me now? Could I find myself back on a Ducati to compete? Am I going to be fast enough on an Aprilia? I'm watching the Aprilia, it's not doing anything. Do I believe in myself? Is my body, am I going to turn into who we'll talk about just now, an Alex Rins, where I trip in the bathroom and I break something? All these kind of things start playing on your mind, and you start questioning yourself. I think Jorge Martin's a very strong personality. He proved that with his big crash a couple of years ago at Portimao. He came back from that. This is a different kettle of fish, though. You're also coming back to a championship where the Ducati is a step above. Marc Marquez is on a Ducati. The Yamahas are getting better. The Hondas are getting better. Everyone's stepping it up, and your Aprilia has just seemed to have hit a brick wall in many ways. So I feel for the guy. I hope he is back sooner rather than later, but at the same time, it's one of those frustrating situations where you've got to be patient, because there's no point in this modern day MotoGP. There's no point coming back unless you're 100% fit. Darren Binder is proving it in Moto2. It is so cutthroat in that paddock at the moment. It's just pointless coming back until you're 100% fit, physically and mentally.
Yeah, Rob, it's just so difficult for him because he's the number one, and he wants to showcase the number one. He wants to showcase his ability, his skill. He wants to prove a point to Ducati that they made a mistake hiring Mark instead of him. So in his head, he's got a million reasons why he must come back as soon as possible. And we know, we've discussed it from the minute we started the show tonight. The margin for error is gone. Yeah. You have to be on it, pinpoint, from the start of free practice one. No more can you use free practice one as let's kind of get ourselves into this mold. We've got 45 minutes, then we've got an hour. Now, lap one of free practice, you've got to be on it. And that's going to be, we said that when he came back in Qatar. If he's at 98%, he's going to have a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say he's any worse, but he's certainly going to be no better because you've done broken ribs. Broken ribs, that the injury might heal, but the problem with a broken rib is the cartilage between the ribs. That's what takes time, and that's what causes the pain. So now he has a little one, and he's very good at having those little moments, and it's going to bite him. So it's going to be a difficult one, but he's going to go back to, in his head, I'm the world champion. I've got a point to prove. I'm on this new bike. I have to go there and represent. It's such a difficult one. It's easy for Marc. Yes, Marc's been there, so he's talking with experience, but he's been through that. It's very easy for him to say, take your time.
Yes.
And for Pecco, that's not what Martin wants to hear. He knows that's probably the right advice, but his head is saying, hey, I'm the world champion. You need to race against me. And that's the difficult, and I empathize with the poor guy. Love him or hate him, irrelevant. He's the world champion, and all he wanted to do was be on that grid from the first race to the last race. And now he's compounded his own problem. And I'm not for 1 second, and I'm not saying he didn't create this problem himself. Yeah, he was very unlucky with Digia at Qatar. At the beginning of the year was all his own doing. But now I think he's got even more pressure to come back quicker because of all those factors in his head. So Aprilia are going to have to play this very carefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last thing you want is another comeback and a big crash again. And, so now their management are going to have to step up. And, if they don't think he's 100, and, he's never going to say to them, listen, I feel like I'm 92%. He's going to say, I'm ready. Here I am. Let's go.
Yeah.
So, difficult one.
Tell me how many push-ups I must do and I'll do them. Yeah, that's the mentality of it. They bull terriers. They just don't give up. Like Alex van der Berg says, as well, there's also sting that Marc is doing so well after Ducati chose him over Martin. You were. I won for you. I deserved it. Yeah. And you chose this guy, and this guy is now proving why you chose him. It can't be easy sitting in a hospital watching it. I want to move on to Honda quickly, Paul, before we get on to two riders in particular that I want to end the show off with talking about. But the Honda exercise again. Not as fulfilling as it certainly was at Qatar. Zarco just seemed off it this weekend, wasn't really in the mix. Marini was actually one of the better performers. Jean Mir was doing so well. As you said, he definitely, I mentioned Lost Corp with Frankie Morbidelli. Jean Mir also just seems to have this little, as you said, like a brain fart in a race or something where, and it's as they switched, the director switched to him. I think it was something ran wide and then down Jean Mir, just to really dig the dagger into him. Let's put you on camera when you fall and fail. But there's this big talk, and I think there's big substance to this. Listening to guys that I know in the paddock, and it's pretty much a done deal. Pedro Acosta and Toprak Razgatlioglu in this Honda team. Definitely Pedro Acosta in the factory Honda team for next year. Pedro Acosta, Toprak in the World Superbike team, but with wildcard possibilities in the MotoGP to give him a taste of MotoGP on the Michelins and these big 1000cc engines. But then 2027, Pirelli tires, Toprak knows inside and out. This new format of MotoGP, Pedro Acosta and Toprak Razgatlioglu. Now, for me, that is the next step Honda need to take. No disrespect to Marini, no disrespect to Jean Mir, but yeah, cool, great, fine, whatever. But this project's moving forward now, and I don't think they are the riders to get it there. I think Marini's done a stellar job, but as I've said pretty much all along, he was always going to be a test rider and information kind of guy. He was never going to be the go get us results and lap records and put us on the podium and wins and challenge for the championship guy. Jean Mir was supposed to be that guy and could be that guy. A couple of years ago, mentality broke down. Do I want to race? Do I want to be here? Am I good enough? Blah, blah, blah. Kind of came back this year refreshed and shown some real good speed in certain times. But if you're not finishing races, you're no good to anybody. It doesn't matter how fast you are, what your credentials are. So for me, I'm very, very, very excited at the sound of Pedro Acosta and Toprak to take that Honda challenge to Ducati and whoever else from 27 onwards.
Yeah, listen, I think it's the right step. We said it last year. Honda needed to sign somebody dynamic, someone. We actually wanted someone who came off a zero platform that didn't come with any input, which we
Yes.
thought, not at the beginning of last year, Pedro Acosta was the guy. Just then we knew it wasn't going to happen, but it was our thought process. Put someone on that bike, a Fermin Aldeguer who's got no expectation, and build from there.
Mm.
So they skipped doing that for last year. So if it happens for next year, obviously Pedro Acosta has now got lots of experience, 2 seasons worth. The Honda is definitely on the up. Zarco has shown good. I won't say one race, one lap pace, more than that, but he can be very unreliable. But
Yes.
he's shown the bike is good. The
Yes.
thing that has impressed me the most, Marini scored points in every race this year.
Yeah.
Remember last year, Marini didn't score points until I think the second last race, and it was only because of a tire pressure infringement, and I can't remember with who, that he got moved to 15th
That's
place.
Brad. Yeah.
He scored, it could have been, eh? He scored points in every race. So I'm quite happy if they keep Marini for next year. Me personally, if I was signing the Honda checkbook, Jean Mir would be gone because he's showing how talented he is, but he never finishes. Now, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are if you finish every race in the kitty litter. So I think the thinking of Honda, and why I agree with you that I think Pedro's deal is done. Last week in Qatar, that's all the commentators were talking about when they showed Pedro Acosta. Has he signed with Honda? Blah blah. This week in Spain, not a word, nothing about the Honda deal. So that kind of says to me that it's been concluded and it's been put away until the official announcement, whenever that's going to be. Maybe we're wrong, but maybe. But anyway, so yeah, I think that's a good thing. Rob, I just want to highlight something, a point you've always made about Luca Marini. So I got this book. Let me just see. Anyone who likes reading, please go when it's about. I don't know if it's available in South Africa. It came via my daughter from the UK last week. In that book, Adam Wheeler, the journalist, says Luca Marini, the best rider to go to a debrief for, because of exactly what you've said, how involved and analytical, and he knows exactly the path he needs to take. So just something in that book, a great read for anyone who likes reading about MotoGP. But yeah, so your point, that's why I would keep Marini for next year. And if they are getting rid of anyone, bomb Jean Mir, leave Zarco in LCR. It's an example of the family environment, the Alex Marquez Grassini, the Aldeguer and Grassini, Maverick possibly as we're seeing in Tech 3. Leave him there. He's fast, he's happy, he's got the same equipment, he's got a Honda contract. The only difference, he's got the prettiest bike on the grid. So leave him there. And that's what I would do. And then if we can pinch Pedro, me as a Honda fanatic, I'd be ecstatic to see how the project would go forward.
Yeah, just look at his manager leading up to the race, and obviously grilling him, and his answer is always, "My rider needs to be on the best bike."
Yeah,
and it's just like, well, that's kind of answering every single question that needs. So yeah, I do think it's a done deal. Mir has a contract for 26. Marini does not. Olimoto. So that's a very interesting point. I just, as like you said, I see more value in Marini over Mir at the moment. Yeah, the speed's great for the one lap, and they're dicing with Brad and Morbidelli, and then. But if you're going to be tucked in the front in 2 seconds,
you've got to bring it home. Yeah,
you've got to bring it home. Got to bring it home. So excited about the Honda project. Zarco, I think, is doing fantastic. He's going to be a solid foundation there for them, especially heading into the French round in a couple of weeks. Fabio Quartararo taking great confidence into that. I think we're going to have a very exciting Le Mans race, talking about crowds from Jerez, last year at Le Mans. I mean, I think it's just going to be, God, I don't want to know what's going to happen there, but I think it's going to be exciting if the weather holds out. We don't know what's going to happen there. Paul, to end the show, of two riders that I really have to talk. I mean, we've spoken about them, but I want to quickly mention them. For me, time's up. Alex Rins, yes, he had a big crash, hurt himself again, did nothing over the weekend, actually showed faster pace in the Monday test, to be honest, but that means nothing. You get nothing. And Raul Fernandez, who, to be shown up by your teammate the way he is just, it's just not happening. Those are two riders for me, and I know contracts, I think Ren's contract is in place. I think Fernandez is gone. But Marc Marquez crashes, picks it up. I'm not going to go about Augusto Fernandez, Aleix Spargo, and Savadori.
Yeah.
Ralph Fernandez, Alex Rins. Did anyone see how Rins is still limping? He does. He still wears a compression.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just, I said it with all due respect, a couple of, I think, at the end of last year already. It's damaged goods, Rins has a contract for 2026 there. Olimoto, once again, thank you so much. They can't go on. Those are quality seats that need, I'm not saying they're not quality riders, but invested proper riders. Ralph Fernandez has a contract for 2026. Olimoto, okay. Turn your computer off, Olimoto. Just sign out, stop. Surely, I don't care that they have a contract. Surely, if it carries on like this, and I can't see much changing. I can see the odd glimmer of hope with a qualifying or maybe a decent result coming in. But overall, just not good enough for current MotoGP standard. And when you've got the likes of Canet and, as you said, some other riders potentially coming through, that highlights it even more.
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at Manu Gonzalez. He's really showing that that's a class act, which Ralph Fernandez was in Moto2. Then he had a year on the KTM, which was disastrous, jumped onto the Aprilia, and there were glimmers. Okay, got injured very early, but there were one or two glimmers of hope, but he's really been disappointing. And as we say, and one thing that we've known about Ayagura, and they've highlighted it in Moto2 and specifically this year, he builds. So he's not the fastest on Friday morning, Friday afternoon a bit better, Saturday. He builds till he's got race pace and he's learning. He's a rookie. Ralph Fernandez is in his 4th season and he seems to have regressed as opposed to progressed. Yeah, I hope that both Fernandez and Rins have clauses in their contract, and please, no disrespect to them, but they are taking seats that they no longer deserve. I mean, Ralph Fernandez is the perfect example. So I don't know. They might have clauses that a performance-based clause that if they don't finish in X amount of position, I got no idea. I just think that there's 2 seats there that's certainly, and obviously we. The Portuguese rider, Miguel Oliveira. And, he's injured, but still, he hadn't done anything last year. So possibly there are going to be 3 seats up for availability. I think if you're going to want to take one of those seats with contracts in place, you're going to have to bring a huge checkbook to buy someone out of a contract. But, they're just disappointing. And Rins, I wouldn't want to be him. He has a big crash. Was it Friday afternoon or Saturday? No, it was Saturday. You saw him limping. He's carrying an injury from a year and a half ago that's just not healing, and every time he does crash, the risk of more damage, imagine what that's going to be like when he's 40 years old, man. He won't even be able to walk in a wheelchair. Yeah, shame. So, I do think it's time to call it a day.
I think that the frustrating thing for me is if I was Yamaha this year, you invested more, 4 bikes, Pramac, championship winning team. We're going to develop this bike. We've got a V4 coming that we're starting to test it. And you've got essentially Fabio Quartararo once again just doing all the work because Jack Miller, I think there'll be input there in terms of certain little technical, but overall you're not getting the impact you want or need from a Jack Miller. You're certainly not getting it from Alex Rins. And you're certainly not getting it from Miguel Oliveira. So it's like, well, okay, we've gone and invested millions and millions and millions, and we've got Fabio again, So even if those contracts are in place, as Olimoto and that says, and you said, Manuel Gonzalez is a perfect one. Look at what Ayagura's done. He's carrying Aprilia. He's as the rookie. Firmin Aldeguer is, proving his worth. He's on a Ducati and, he's doing what rookies do, get up there and crash, but showing his talent. Thank you. Here's your Medal of Honor. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Miguel. But we need fresh blood. We're going into a fresh phase of MotoGP in 2027. You need that freshness,
Yeah, and I mean, you're mentioning now, if we go back and think about Luca Marini, should Marini be finishing ahead of Ralph Fernandez? In all fairness, 4 years ago when Fernandez was in Moto2 and you said, okay, he's going to be drilled by Luca Marini on a kind of, I mean, if you compare the Honda and the Aprilia, I think they're much of a muchness. I don't think there's, maybe at the moment the Hondas 0.25% better, maybe.
Mm,
But Agura is showing that maybe it's not. But Marini's drilling Ralph Fernandez, which to me means that, and once again, no disrespect to Marini, his job, I think, is a test factory rider, as opposed to the Johan Zarco, who's the results-driven rider. So I just think to myself, Fernandez, he's never, ever, it's not like I think he had one race last year where he finished 5th or 6th. Other than that, he struggles to get in the points. So, yeah, it really is a difficult situation. It's a difficult one for Trackhouse. What do they do, if there is a contract in place, it's difficult. And Rins, I just feel sorry for him, The injuries just stack up. And if you are riding injured all the time, Rob, it compounds that injury and the way you ride the bike, and you're always trying to compensate somewhere. And like we've said, it doesn't work anymore. Now you've got to be on it 100% all the time.
Kaz Weeks makes a good point with Jack Miller. He's kind of doing, replicating what he did at KTM, good early pace. And it's frustrating for me because I know the guy there, but it does seem to have got, there seems to be a familiar pattern happening here with Jack Miller. Yeah. And as Olimoto says, the likes of Miller and Oliveira, I think, will find themselves in World Superbikes. Ralph Fernandez back to Moto2. But just, again, to highlight the toughness of Moto2, not giving any excuses for Darren, but Joe Roberts, the next best thing, the next best American, go to MotoGP. Is he even racing anymore? Does he even race still? So just shows you how tough that Moto2 paddock is. But Olimoto makes a very good point, and a name that deserves to be thrown in the mix for MotoGP ride is Nicolo Bulliga from World Superbikes, because he was the golden boy of Italian racing, and then just kind of left VR46, and then everything just went downhill from there. But he really, I take my hat off to the guy for the way he's built his career back up, and he's shown that he's a big bike rider. I think it's definitely a contender for when MotoGP goes 2027 on Pirelli tires. A guy like him, who is the fastest guy in World Superbikes other than Toprak, at the moment, it's him and Toprak, really. He deserves to have his name thrown in the hat, and I would take him over a Miguel or a Jack, no disrespect to them, but I'd take him, especially for 2027, with that experience on Pirelli. So there's no doubt about it. Joe Roberts must regret turning down Aprilia 5 or 6 years ago. Olimoto, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Paul, I think that's pretty much it. I think we've covered a lot here. It was positive. It was nice to speak a bit more positively about KTM this time. Let's hope. Le Mans is a tricky one, eh? Le Mans is, again, it's one of those tracks that you watch from the outside and you think there's a bit of room to play with. In that, when I went there with Sheridan for the Le Mans 24-hour a couple of years ago, I walked that track and it's a go-kart track, man. It's a go-kart track. How do these guys get those bikes around you? It is tight. There's no room for error. How those guys overtake, I don't know. The track's narrow. You're on the side of the tire a lot, which scares me from a KTM point of view. So I think, I hope there's going to be good racing. I hope Pecco can just find a switch and just attack and get Mark out of his mind and just get back to the Pecco we know. Fabio is showing good quality on the Yamaha, but let's hope for some more excitement and speed.
Yeah, exactly that, Rob. And one thing that it's a little bit difficult for us to control because it's TV producers. There've been some good races further down the grid, but we haven't seen that. And I can understand they're showing the front, and the front is dramatic. It might not be exciting, but that would be interesting if we saw some of those battles further down. I mean, all we get to see is watch the timing screens on the left of the screen. But I think it'll be a good weekend. Le Mans normally brings some surprises, eh? So and the weather can be, you don't know what you're going to get till you actually start or finish the race. So it'll be another fantastic weekend of that, there's no doubt. And let's hope Darren has a great weekend.
Yeah, let's hope Daz can come back fully fit and fighting. Brad has a good weekend. I don't think we'll be seeing Riche Woodley, unfortunately, but let's hope he can get back sooner rather than later. Paul, big thank you to you once again. Big thank you to every single one who commented, hit the like button and subscribe button on YouTube, and shared this as far as wide as possible. The show's not possible without all your input, all your information, all your comments. Absolutely love it. It's why we do this, and it's why we take the time out to do it. So have the week off, enjoy the time off, and in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be back talking MotoGP right here with Motor Rider World, talking MotoGP Le Mans. Goodbye, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob, and to everyone who tuned in. Thanks, guys, and we'll chat in 2 weeks' time.